So if you're looking at hiring employees via any third party, whether it's an outsourcing company or a staffing company or some other third party arrangement for hiring and for kind of managing human resources, you've probably come across two terms: employer of record, or EOR, and professional employer organizations, or PEOs. In this video, we're going to walk through what the differences are between EORs and PEOs, what the use cases are, and kind of what the similarities and differences are between the two, and how they affect you if you are looking to hire one. We're also going to go over briefly kind of where outsourcing companies fall into this, into the umbrellas of EORs and PEOs. So hopefully you will take away some pretty useful information from this video. Let's get started. If you're new here, my name is Fahad. I am the founder and managing partner of a company called Meridian BPO. We're a full-service outsourcing firm that helps companies outsource key roles in areas like customer service, technical support, software development, account management, accounting, bookkeeping, medical billing, and a handful of other verticals. If you're interested in saving 50 to 70% off of your staffing costs, please do give me a ring. My information is going to be in the description of this video. Hopefully we can get on a quick call to kind of just go over your needs and scope things out completely for free to kind of see if outsourcing actually will work for your business or not. All right, let's get into the video. So if you are familiar at all with the concept of staffing companies, you will be kind of familiar with how employer of record, or EOR, companies and third parties work. Staffing companies essentially are usually used for companies who have a certain role requirement they may need to fill, maybe software engineers, full stack engineers, Python engineers, something like that, something specific where they need to fill 10 roles of this thing. And they're comfortable hiring a staffing firm who might already have access to that talent ready to go, and then giving it to the employer or the business. So you will go out and you'll hire a staffing firm. The staffing firm will be a little expensive because you are not actually going to take any of the tax burden, the payroll tax burden, from the company. So you're not going to be taking that payroll tax burden, meaning they're going to be responsible for that payroll tax burden, meaning obviously the amount that they're going to charge you is going to be more than if you had that employee as a contractor or directly on your payroll as a W-2 employee. They're going to factor in other costs that they've incurred as well, things like recruiting costs and other costs of that nature to kind of hire and find the employee. They also obviously they have to pay recruiters commissions as well to go out and find those people. So that's kind of how staffing companies work. Now, EORs are essentially employer of record services. Staffing companies generally take on pretty much this exact same service themselves. An employer of record is basically going to be a employer of record. Very simple. It's kind of in the name. Employer of record is going to have the employee under them legally from a tax perspective, as well as for any compliance related, things like OSHA and other kind of compliance related perspectives. That employee is going to be the legal employer of, that employer is going to be the legal employer of that employee. The employee is going to be under that company, even if they are working for you. And so the management of the company may be split. The management of the the management of the employee may be split. The management of the employee might be under you and fall under you. But legally, from a tax perspective, from the payroll tax withholding perspective, the employer of record is going to be the sole kind of you can say the sole employer of that employee. Now, again, with EORs, just like with staffing companies, you're going to be in charge of terminations as well. So if you need to get rid of an employee, if you need to say to the employee, hey, I need you to be here at this time, I need you to be here tomorrow to work a little bit over for, XYZ project that we have going on, they are going to be obliged to do that because, again, they are your employee, and the management of the employee is up to you, whereas they are just legally the employee of the employer of record, or the staffing firm in the case of the employer of record being the staffing firm. Now, a professional employer organization is also a type of human resource outsourcing, or HRO. Now, a lot of these terms, you have to remember, are industry terms. They are not academic terms. They don't have defined definitions. They're kind of just terms to describe the nature of certain companies and the way certain companies operate within an industry environment. And, as everybody knows, when you're talking about companies doing certain things, there's a lot of overlap. There's not very many definitions followed. These are more general guidelines for, how to look at a company, or how to look at the way that something is happening. So a professional employer organization overlaps quite a bit with employer of record, but there is a difference. Now, a professional employer organization, or PEO, is essentially going to take on the human resources liability from you. So they are going to take on the liability of, again, hiring people, finding people, going through the interview process, going through all of these processes to vet out candidates and find the right candidates and pay for the recruiting and all of these things. But the one difference, and the one thing that PEOs are different in, is going to be the management of the employee, and actually the shared relationship of the employee. Now, with the EOR, the employee themselves, they're going to have the company, you're going to have full day-to-day operational kind of management of the employee, right? Legally, they're somebody else's employee, but day-to-day, you have all the management. With a professional employer organization, things are a little bit different. Professional employer organizations essentially are set up to share control between the company and the PEO. So there's a shared relationship going on. Things like terminations and management day-to-day, these are things that can be, in a sense, negotiated with most PEOs. To the extent, like, how much do we, will the company be managing the employee versus how much will the PEO be managing the employee and such. So it's a different definition. And to be honest, these are kind of similar to how outsourcing firms work in a sense, because outsourcing firms, specifically those who are offshoring roles, will typically work, again, as kind of the legal go-to for the employees, but the management might be a little bit more shared, right? So you might be in charge of making sure the employee has day-to-day deliverables and things like that. But when it comes to actually logging in, tracking time, things like that, the outsourcing firm or the professional employer organization might actually be taking on that burden for you. So in a sense, there's, some differences. Of course, if you are an employer of record and you hire an outsourcing firm, if you are a client and, you hire an outsourcing firm, that outsourcing firm, if they're offshoring those roles, those employees are located in another nation, right, in another country. So, you don't have that same control day to day over the operations of the employee, and that's why outsourcing would fall more under the PEO bracket, because you're sharing the responsibility, you're sharing the day-to-day management responsibilities between you, the client, and the outsourcing firm within this kind of dynamic. Now, it's important to note that an EOR, or an employer of record, generally speaking, is not going to provide things like benefits and employee relations. So things like, health insurance and all of these things, let's say paid time off and all of these are more going to be provided by the company, whereas a PEO is going to help provide the employees with all of those things, the benefits, the paid time off, and all of that. So the PEO works more as a suite of HR services that they're providing to the employer, while the employer of record really is just a very transactional, we're responsible for the payroll, we're responsible for this, we're going to kind of lease you the employee, as strange as that sounds, for a certain period of time. So legally they're our employee, they're working day to day with you in the EOR sense, With a professional employer organization, there's more, again, that shared responsibility, and they're also going to provide more in the way of services when it comes to HR and human resources. So ultimately, when you're looking at EORs and PEOs, again, the main difference to conclude is going to be that shared relationship and kind of the degree of control that you'll have over the employee. With the EOR, you're going to have a higher level of control because they're going to be day to day, they're going to be there with you, and they are essentially going to be your employee day to day completely, right? You're going to assign them all the roles, you're going to assign them everything. With the PEO, the legally and also in some in some kind of arrangements, the tax arrangement is going to be split. And again, that's not where an outsourcing firm would kind of fall under that bracket where they'd share that responsibility. That would mostly, the tax responsibility would fall on the outsourcing firm if you use the outsourcing firm context. But in professional employer organizations, if they're hiring someone locally in the same country you're in, then there is a little bit, there is potential for that relationship, the employee relationship from a tax perspective to maybe fall under both you as the client and them as the PEO, the professional employer organization. So hopefully you guys got a little bit of a feel for the differences. I know, again, there's a lot of overlap in these terms because they are not set in stone. They're not academic terms in any sense. They are industry terms to kind of just describe the services that have come out for both EORs and PEOs. I will add also some PEOs also provide some strategy services. So essentially, here's the thing. Most of the PEOs, again, like I was saying just a little while ago, a lot of them differ. So they're not set in stone, these terms. A lot of them differ. And very frequently, a lot of the PEO arrangements are going to be very different from one PEO to the next PEO to the next. So PEO, EOR, these are umbrella terms to describe essentially the dynamic of the amount of the shared kind of control and responsibility that you have over the day-to-day operations of the employees. But in most cases, they are usually the compliance, tax, HR burden of the EOR company or the PEO company. Although, again, with PEOs, the tax liability and some of the other parts of the arrangement can vary because of the nature of that kind of the role of the PEO. So again, hopefully this was insightful. Hopefully it was a little helpful. If you would like, there is going to be a link in the description down below to go over to our website and actually look at the actual article, the full print article of this, to kind of break down a little bit more some technicalities of how EORs and PEOs work. And again, we'll break down kind of the outsourcing perspective as well on this. So hopefully you guys, again, learned something from this video. Take care. Bye-bye.